It's been 50 whole years since the world was introduced to Roger Moore as 007. Live and Let Die was an instant classic, and its reputation as a Bond film has stood the test of time. After Sean said goodbye for the second time with Diamonds Are Forever, there were genuine worries that the public wouldn't take to a different actor donning the famous dinner jacket. Although On Her Majesty's Secret Service is now rightly regarded as one of the finest outings, the public didn't quite take to George Lazenby, and producers needed a long-term replacement. Roger was always in the running from the beginning and seemed destined to play the part. So this was more of a coronation, and he eased into the role from his very first scene. Yes, he's with a lady, and in fact, I had a great time meeting Madeline Smith, who played Miss Caruso in that rather amusing scene. But this was a very different Bond film in many ways to what had come before, and what came after. The only one which contained supernatural elements, with its spooky voodoo themes. The influence of blaxploitation was evident, and it was great to see the series' first and only black main villain, the first black Bond girl that Bond kissed, and a stunning array of character actors filling out the supporting cast. Like most of our favourite Bond films, it had a mix of the deadly serious and the truly ridiculous. It also gave the world Sheriff J.W. Pepper, and whatever people think of him now, he was very popular at the time. There are so many things to enjoy, it's no wonder that it was a huge hit at the box office and continues to entertain audiences today. So to celebrate the anniversary, we gathered to discuss why we love the film so much, and it was great to have so many of you contribute with your thoughts. First off, myself, my brothers Harry and Math, John, Steve Clamp, and Bob Foster. Bob, did you watch Live and Let Die at the cinema?
Yes.
Brilliant.
Oh, wow.
Right, this is how you did that. That's amazing.
That is
Yeah.
incredible.
I say my first film on its original run was The Man with the Golden Gun, and then they showed a rerun of Live and Let Die in the second. Well, it would be to be 75 because Golden Gun came out at Christmas 74. So I saw Live and Let Die about March, April 75. In the same year, I think they then started re-showing. They did the double bills of Dr. No and Goldfinger and From Russia with Love and You Only Live Twice. But I only saw Dr. No and Goldfinger on that run. So Live and Let Die was my second film that I saw. So, yeah, I was quite knocked out by it actually, because obviously I'd already seen Roger. I hadn't seen Connery. I wasn't really aware of John Barry then, so which is why I think I still hold George Martin's score so high, even though he did do a very, very good job. Because it was my second film, it obviously brings a lot of memories back of seeing it originally. So hasn't anybody else seen it apart from this obviously latest run? Hasn't anybody else seen it at the cinema on its original?
I didn't see it on this run or on its original release. I did watch it last week on the big telly, but no, sadly I've never seen it on the big screen.
Well, what was your first experience of it though, Steve? Did you see it on video then?
Yeah, it would have been on ITV on whenever it was shown. And then, yeah, when I got the original, when they did the VHS releases, it would have been when they did. Do you remember they did the VHS releases, but they didn't. They sort of, it was really random, the films they started releasing. I remember that there was there was one Dalton one out, there was 3 or 4 more ones there, and it was really weird. They didn't release them in any particular order. Eventually the whole set existed, but they didn't seem to have any sense about the order. It was that set of videos I got. And I remember the License to Kill one with Dalton had a really rubbish picture of Dalton, which looked nothing like him on the front. But yeah, that was when I got it on video. But yeah, it would have been on ITV when I first saw it, and probably recorded it as well.
Would that have been the 80s then, or?
Oh yeah, probably probably sort of mid to late 80s when I was really getting into Bond. I know I was quite into Bond around A View to a Kill because I had A View to a Kill posters. That's my kind of first memory. It's my first memory is the posters rather than actually watching the films. But I think that's just how your childhood brain remembers things, isn't it?
Very much like our older brother James. But he had the posters, and I think we had that collection of Living Daylights on video, perhaps.
Yeah.
Late
I
80s.
was wondering.
Yeah, it was lovely. But yeah, so Rob, what was your first?
I wanted just to answer Bob really, to say that I did see it in the run last time, and I took my whole family, my kids, and the whole lot.
Yeah.
They adored it. They absolutely adored it. They sat stock still for the whole time, and it was obviously like an 8 p.m. showing at the Trafford Centre. Youngest one was 4 at the time, eldest was 11, and they just loved every minute of it. It was back when James Bond had a bit of something for everybody. You know, so there's so much for them all to enjoy. Mrs. Parker enjoyed it as well. So it was absolutely fabulous. But my relationship with Live and Let Die would go back to Grandad's VHSs that he used to bring out on a Sunday afternoon before Sunday tea. So, you know, the adults would be taking it in turn in the kitchen, putting the Yorkshire puds and the beef on and the chicken on and all that kind of stuff. And then we'd be, you know, the kids would be out in the living room in front of their telly with the VHS collection Grandad had, of which Roger Moore's and Sean Connery's James Bonds were just all over them. So this would have been about 1989, possibly something like that. He didn't have any Daltons at all. But again, probably too recent, really. They might not have seen, you know, terrestrial television airtime possibly by that point. And I remember seeing this, and I remember thinking that the opening introduction of James Bond was quite different because of he's not in action in this one. Well, he is in a different way, I suppose. He's not. You know, it's not the tail end of a mission, for example, or whatever. And I just remember seeing Roger, thinking how young Roger looked compared to the later ones, because I saw this comparatively late to, say, Octopussy, Spy Who Loved Me, Moonraker, and just thinking like, wow, flipping heck, this guy's James Bond, isn't he? You know, and that's pretty much it, really. And obviously loving it, absolutely loving it. I think there's a broader point to say that in 1980s England, watching this on television was quite seismic in my understanding of racial harmony.
Yeah.
Seriously, I don't want that to come across as either shallow or facetious or anything like that. Like I'm trying to make a big point, but it was quite something in the 80s. This, and it certainly for myself, it set amazing sort of standards and a benchmark about what to expect about that kind of thing in cinema, which resonated with me back then and still does today.
At the time, Bob, was it at all, were people like, I don't know whether you remember because you'll have been young, but you know, Bond, the first kiss with a black woman, things like this, and loads of black actors in it?
No, not that I can remember. I don't think I'd have noticed, is what I'm going to say. When I saw it, I'd have been 14. I can't remember anything being said about it at all.
That's good, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
But to put them into a film, you know, like a film like this, with a white Caucasian hero, it's quite a big thing in itself, rather than you know, it just being a principally black cast.
Arguments, I suppose, are made that you've got to have positive role models who are black, and obviously, this film does have the agent working with Felix, who's great.
Strutter.
Strutter,
but you've obviously got a lot of what could be perceived as negative black role models, and I think that's often been the issue. It's not just having black people on film and television; it's having them in positive roles. But obviously, it fits with this story. I'm not getting this film at all. I don't think, to my mind, my small mind, it doesn't do anything wrong. But I just made that point, really.
So, Live and Let Die is the first James Bond film I ever saw. I went on a school trip in year 6, like my last year at primary school, to Whitby, and we had this curfew that you had to go into your room at 8 o'clock. And there was 4 of us in a room. Like, you know, when you're 11-year-old, you're not going to go to bed at 8 o'clock. So we turned the telly on, and it was a Wednesday night, and it was the ITV, and Live and Let Die started. And I wasn't massively into it. I hadn't really heard of James Bond very much. And then I was flitting in and out. And then I remember vividly, it was Roger with Rosie Carver, and the scene, the music going on, the scarecrows like turning around, and then the scarecrows killing Rosie there. And I remember this 11-year-old boy in me was just like, what is this world that I am entering? This was nothing like I'd seen before. And I didn't watch all that much of it after that. You know, I maybe watched another 20 minutes, 30 minutes, but that got me intrigued. And then from that point, right, next week I've got to watch James Bond. And I remember from that Live and Let Die was that very first point that got me into Bond. 6 weeks ago, I was actually in Whitby. I went on holiday there. It was my choice to watch the film at night, and I said to my wife Rachel, "I'm really sorry, but we're going to have to watch Live and Let Die in Whitby." So we watched it. My wife, she's been watching them quite a bit with me recently, which is some major breakthrough. She was just like, "This film is completely and utterly bonkers." Like, and it was quite interesting because I don't see it like that because I just adore it so much. But to have this outsider just come and watch it, and she's like, "I'm really enjoying this. I really like this film. It's not a case of that, but this is crazy." And I think that is the reality of it. Is that yeah, we can look at things with a 21st century perspective, and we can look and go, that's problematic, that could have been better, etc. But for the period of time it was, the imagination that is going on with this film, the characterization, it's a mind-blowingly imaginative film. And I don't think that I have given it as much credit as I should have done. I think I was like, yeah, it's my first film. But then after that, it's like, that's it. You know, it's my first film. It's always been, I love it, but it's middle of my rankings. And recently, I've just been thinking to myself, no, Live and Let Die is amazing. And I think I said it on a podcast with him recently. For me, and I know there have to be a lot of changes stuff, but if you want a blueprint of what the next Bond film should be like, go to Live and Let Die for me. Because I think that the characterization of what is going on there and the adventure is just so far removed from what we've previously been having in the last few Bond films.
I think that's why it appeals so much to kids as well. And it did to us as kids when we were growing up. That doesn't mean it's a children's film at all. It just means there's so much going on that it's so accessible in that way. There's so many interesting characters. And
I totally agree with you with that. I mean, if you said to me, what films would you recommend as a kid for kids? I'd go Octopussy, Moonraker, Live and Let Die. And yeah, Live and Let Die is pretty much the only supernatural James Bond film. You know, it's all about voodoo worship,
black magic.
Black magic. And if it's not about voodoo worship, that's a cover up for heroin growing and smuggling. You know, it's just not a kids' film, and yet it is. And it's
like Octopussy, it's deadly serious.
Yeah.
Deadly serious. Despite the bits and pieces on the the layerings and the coverings over there, it's deadly serious. This stuff.
There's multiple things going on, aren't there? Which makes it a little bit more. It's not a basic heroin film, is it? It's not a war film. There's loads more to it than that. Harry, I mean, I didn't realize how much you love Live and Let Die until you sort of became almost outspoken in the love. Since we're doing the podcast, but not that we don't love it ourselves, but
it's not a basic heroin film.
Heroin, solitary basic heroin.
Yes, I absolutely love this film. I think this idea that I speak up for it is only because when we started this podcast, I think it was just a while before we mentioned it, or it was a while before we thought,
well, this is it. This is the first time we mentioned it.
Yeah, and I think it's partly because it is a special film, and everyone knows it's a special film, kind of. And it's not in the same way where people, well, it's a little bit similar to Goldfinger, as in, people know its worth, so there's no real need to revisit it. But I just think it's. The other thing, the thing I think as a child growing, obviously I didn't see it when it originally came out, but as a child, it's got all the things we've discussed, and as well as that, it's just extremely cool, isn't it? You've got characters who are so very, very cool, like Kananga, Teehee, unbelievable. Teehee is an underrated character who absolutely captures your imagination as a child, and he's so fun to to watch. And it's not just what he looks like in terms of his arm, but in terms of his character, is absolutely brilliant. And then the music and the theme song is just so cool.
Yeah.
It's so exciting, thrilling, and action packed. Amazing locations, and when we were younger, we weren't unaware of horror, shall I say. We did watch the odd horror as children, fairly inappropriately.
Far too much, yeah.
Yeah. And there's with that element, I think even that was exciting, and that the idea of snakes was sort of linked to your childhood memories of Indiana Jones and things like that. It's all those things you love to see as a child. And I've not shown it my daughter yet, but I'm absolutely certain she'll be blown away by it, because a bit like John mentioned with his wife, and I can't remember if I've mentioned it on another episode, but my wife isn't into Bond at all. But I was just watching Live and Let Die. I can't remember what the occasion was, just by myself, and it was the scene where he's stranded on that island and it's surrounded by crocodiles. And I watched that and I thought, that is unbelievable. And then my wife came in and I thought, right, I'm pausing that and I'm rewinding the whole thing and let's watch it. And I was like, you don't need to commit to the whole film. Just watch this 5-10 minutes and watch it through. And she was really hooked and impressed and amazed by it. And it's things like that, set pieces like that, which are just incredible. They're iconic now, but to watch at the time as children, even as adults, knowing that it's a real stunt done for real, it's astonishing.
Yeah.
And I think I can't, our children now, I'm speaking on everyone's behalf, kind of, there's so much stuff available to them, like on Netflix and Prime, where amazing things happen. For example, we were watching the new Peter Pan thing on Disney the other day. There's a floating ship and stuff, which is amazing, but it's CGI. The children don't know that it's CGI. They don't really talk about how amazing it is. I think by CGI, children accept a lot, and they don't question it. They don't label it or anything like that. There's a world created for children's films now where everything's possible, anything's possible, kind of. But I definitely think when they watch something like a stunt guy using real alligators and crocodiles as stepping stones, even if they can't place it, they will know that is breathtaking. There's something there that is actually dangerous and actually real. They don't know about the world of stunts and things like that, but there'll be something there that they'll be able to define the difference there between the CGI children's world and a real action stunt like that with animals. And I think it's special moments like that that make these Bond films, especially Live and Let Die, so memorable and iconic.
Behind the stunts, of course, John Orty, when we did our episode on stunts, and this is one of the sort of first proper daring stunts, you could say. I know it's not dangling at 1,000 feet on the back of a plane or anything like that. I just remember John sort of said, I said, have we ever seen anything like this before or since? And he said, no, because that was the whole point then. Do something that you've never seen before, and then you don't ever need to do it again, do you? And that runs throughout the whole film. There's so many weird things that, no, don't do them again, because they're that indelible with this film.
What you said there, Harry, about CGI, it's so true. You could imagine a scene like that in a film starring The Rock, couldn't you? I mean, it's perfect. It runs across the top of Crocodile Head. Of course, it would be done with CGI. They would shoot it from all sorts of clever angles, and it would be, 10 seconds, and you'd kind of go, oh, that's quite fun. You wouldn't be impressed. You'd think that's fun. But when you watch this, the shot lasts, 2 seconds? It's incredibly brief, because obviously you can't be standing on their heads for very long. In that flash, in that moment, it is, as you say, everything you said takes your breath away. And it wouldn't be done like that now. Probably not even in a Bond film, sadly, because of the way CGI is used so much now, which is a real shame. Maybe they'll go back to the real stuff in the next films. But certainly you could see it in any other Hollywood picture. And CGI now.
And the stunt gets the build-up you need, because first of all, you're panicking, like, how can he possibly escape from this?
Yeah,
and then it's so well done that he uses his gizmo, his gadget, the magnetic watch, and typical James Bond, a gadget saves the day. And then oh my word, it's not worked.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
yeah,
wow.
Yeah.
Like now I'm a little bit worried. What possible way is there for him to get out of this? And it's not a gadget. It's kind of the cheek of Bond. Do you know what I mean? It's
His
the
wits,
tenacity. Yeah.
Only Bond.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so surprising.
It's the execution of it as well, though, isn't it? Because it's like you've got to do one step, alternate, and one misstep, one pause, and you're a goner. I mean, yeah.
The stuntman did get caught, didn't he, by one of them?
Yeah, there were a couple of times.
Caught his shoe, didn't it?
Yeah, but we won't see this again because of, probably quite rightly, because of the danger, and I think, you know, laws and regulations and things like that, both for the animals and on films. But in fact, you know, it was a nice nod to it in Skyfall, where he uses the Komodo dragon as a stepping stone.
Yeah,
but obviously in that, everyone's aware that it's CGI, you know, probably quite right. I mean, I don't know, you know, but you know, for that bit, you don't love it because it's a really dangerous stunt. It's because it's a nice Bond touch that is a nod to Live and Let Die and to Bond's wits in general.
Yeah. So Skyfall's the only other supernatural Bond film, isn't it?
Dragons.
Yeah, dragons. We'll move on to Roger's performance, because I know Bob didn't see it as his first Roger film, but this was quite a big moment in the franchise, because you'd had the final, what we thought was the final Sean film with You Only Live Twice. Then at the time it was George in Honor Majesties, and it was a different film. It was a one-off. It did do okay, but it didn't do anything like as well as they wanted it to. And of course we ended up, we'll get Sean back. And after that was a massive success at the time, Diamonds. They must have been worried, well, is this ever going to work without Sean? Long term, only Roger could have done it, because there was, again, a bit of a coronation, wasn't it? He'd been the Saints, and he'd been in audiences' eyes on TV, and he'd always been talked about as a potential Bond. And the way he eases into this film, there's no way, as kids when you grow up, there's no way you'd know that this was his first film other than his age. It doesn't look like he's nervous, does it? Or
no,
not the complete Bond. And I know he would become more and more Roger. Well, Octopussy, I think we've said, is probably the most all-rounder Roger performance. Here, he's got, I don't know, he's probably the coolest in this film, isn't he? He looks unbelievable. The long jacket as he comes off the airport in New York is just sensational. The different looks he has, the cockiness is there that goes above what Sean would do. You know, when he's in Solitaire's gown with the cards. I mean, it's only Roger can get away with this kind of behaviour, really.
Put down those cards. It is a blasphemy. They tell nothing to those who cannot see.
Oh, but they do. That's a bit of luck. Good luck for both of us. The cards say we will be lovers.
You're mistaken. It's impossible, forbidden for me. Now you must go.
But you do believe. I mean, really believe in the cards.
Well, they have never lied to me.
Then they won't now. Pick one. You knew the answer before it was given. Strangely enough, somehow. So did I.
I think at the time, I just assumed that he'd been James Bond all the while. I obviously liked it because that kick-started the whole me being interested in it in the first place.
Shall I throw the controversy out there, and then you can all shout me down? I think as a Roger performance, it's his weakest Bond film, which would make some sense being it's his first. But for me, and I don't think it's entirely his fault. I think there's a lack of confidence from Guy Hamilton in the way he shoots Roger in this film. Well, obviously he's not in the opening pre-title sequence at all, which for me, when you're introducing a new Bond, seems very strange. Was that they were nervous that obviously you've just highlighted the changes that had come before. Were they a bit nervous at that? So they just tried to set up a mystery without him. And then I don't think that there's not a lot of close-ups. There's not like, take The Living Daylights. There's that brilliant establisher of Timothy Dalton in there.
One more time again. Ma non è possibile, amore.
We don't get the dramatic. He's just in his flat, and M turns up. There's no kind of dramatic. Here is Bond. Here's your new Bond. And I wonder. I don't know if Roger fed off that. If there was a feeling. I bet they were all nervous. Of course they were. It's his first shot at his biggest role, and I just feel like I do think he grows into it. I definitely do. Now, I assume they shot it mostly in order. I know it gets chopped and changed about a bit when they're shooting, but I do feel, and I don't know if I'm just reading into it, but when I was watching it more closely the day ahead of this podcast, I was thinking that you feel like towards the end, Roger is getting more confident. And we do see flashes of what will become brilliant Roger later. And his delivery of that line to Rosie Carver when she's just seen the snake. And he said, "Oh, a snake. I should have told you never go in a bathroom without a mongoose."
Oh, a snake. I forgot. I should have told you should never go in there without a mongoose.
No other actor could deliver that the way Roger does. And that actually, I was bent over double laughing. I'd forgotten about the line.
So underrated.
It's absolutely superb. And there, so you're seeing the flourishes of what Roger's going to do. You see plenty of what he's going to do in films. But I just feel like he hasn't quite found, I don't feel like he owns it. Like by the time you get to The Spy Who Loved Me, and all the films that come after it, and to an extent, I think, with The Man with the Golden Gun, because he's probably got confidence after the decent box office from Live and Let Die. I feel like he really owns it. He's just confident. He walks on. I'm going to do it the way I do it because I know that's fine. I just feel in this film, I can almost see him finding his feet, and I wonder if Guy Hamilton also had nerves about it being yet another face in the role. In that sense, didn't particularly shoot it to introduce Roger. He just kind of wanted to just make the film. I don't know. Certainly for me, and I think, I don't know if it's because of his performance, but it always feels like the odd one out of all the Roger Moore Bond films to me. It doesn't feel like it fits like all the others. Part of that maybe because the story is, despite what we've said about the magical and the mystical, it is set in quite a reality thing. It's a drug dealer story, isn't it?
Yeah.
And a lot of the locations aren't particularly flashy. We're downtown New York. It's quite grim. It doesn't feel like the big flashy but Roger Moore films we get later. And that was obviously a conscious decision. And it benefits from all that, don't get me wrong. But I just think there's two reasons it stands out from all the other Roger Moore films. One is the choice of locations. And for me, the other is that Roger doesn't kind of own it like he later would own the other films. Anyway, I hand it over now. I'll duck for cover.
I mean, might be partly because the other characters are so huge as well, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true.
That might have been a deliberate thing.
Also, we say Roger looks very young. He does. But I also think he's quite thin, quite small. I feel like he keeps up a bit. He's never Daniel Craig, but I mean, I feel like he's not like Connery in this or Lazenby. He's not built like them, is he? He's very wiry, which had probably suited the Saint. And I wonder, I know reading his autobiography, he hated going to the gym, but they did make him go to the gym, for some of the Bond films. So I wonder if they did get him to beef up a little bit just to put on a bit of weight after this, because he does look. I think one of the reasons he looks so young is he's tall but very small with it.
He's not got that majestic barrel-chested physique of Spy Who Loved Me. He looks like an oak, like a lovely oak carving later on in his tenure. Gorgeous one. And, if I could, I don't disagree with anything you've said there at all, Steve. I really don't. I think, for myself, I think I really like the fact that they don't signpost this as a new James Bond. I think it's a nice little, and I think it's a step away from, they're very much fourth wall breaking. This never happened to the other chap.
Absolutely.
This is just business as usual. We don't even need to introduce the guy. And there's so many ways I suppose you could read it, and I totally respect every reading of it. Like you suggested there, Steve, that perhaps they weren't totally like, oh, it's a new James Bond, what do we do kind of thing, and I do understand that very much. Maybe they'd seen Roger in early footage or the screen test, and they were like, no, we don't need to do anything flashy with this fella. He's got this. We don't need to do anything here. So who knows? But I love the fact that we just slide into the next Roger Moore. He's already doing all the James Bond stuff. In fact, a little bit more in this game. Struggling agents into wardrobes that he's trying to do dastardly things with. It does set up Roger Moore's tenure really well for me. I really like it. I think he's fabulous. And I think what's lovely to have watched in recent years is the affection that's come out for him.
Yeah.
Cause, for so many people, a lot of people said he was the joke James Bond. He really wasn't at all. For anyone who's paying actual attention. And it's just great to see him get the love and affection that he really deserves.
I do agree, Steve, that the way that he's directed, I think is a deliberate move away from how they introduced the last Bond. But for me, I love that. I love how it's understated. I think I'm a massive fan of Roger's performance in this film, but I think James Bond is deliberately awkward in this film. So if you look at, he's a fish out of water in every single scenario. He goes into a fillet of sole, and he's the only white man. He goes to San Monique.
He's a cue ball.
Exactly. Yeah. He's the only white man. Now take that in contrast to the man with the golden gun, where he's in Asia. Yeah, but they put him in a karate outfit. They kind of move him into the culture in some kind of ways. Whereas here, rightly or wrongly, but as here, there is this deliberate, from the minute he gets off the plane in New York, that this man stands out, and not just the excellence stand out like, wow, that's James Bond, but the stands out like he is a fish out of water here. And I think that is deliberate in it. I think the biggest compliment I can give Roger's performance in this is that nobody was asking about Sean Connery after it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Job done. Yeah.
Job done. That's the only thing I can say.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I think it doesn't seem like there's any intention from him or anyone for him to fill Sean Connery's shoes. The focus is on Roger Moore's James Bond, trying to step into James Bond's shoes. That's one of the strengths about it. Again, like the others said, you can't disagree with what you've said, Steve. I totally understand it, but I think I like that about it. I think that he slips into the film, they slip him into the film, and that whole fish out of water thing that John's described makes him shine, because he is so cool in all these situations where he's completely isolated, completely on his own, down the back streets of New York, wearing, being incredibly British with this long coat on, but still unbelievably cool with these gangsters saying really funny things. And I do think he does, whether it's filmed in order or not, I agree that he seems to just grow and grow into the role and become more and more confident. By the time he's like, is it facing death, and having his fingers broken off, and he's so assured and calm, and it's I feel like I definitely think Roger Moore hits his stride as James Bond when him and John Glenn are together towards the end, in terms of like Octopussy, A View to a Kill. I think Moonraker, of course, but I think this kind of reminds me of, I don't know what a good analogy is, like a stand-up comedian's first few tours, in terms of there's something untapped into, and you're seeing them at their finest, where they're coming up with all the goods themselves, and there's something special about them that not everyone's discovered yet. That's the best analogy I can come up with at the moment. But I think it's such a good interpretation of James Bond, and like John said, in no way does it look like he's trying to fill Sean Connery's boots at all.
No, not at all. It's certainly not filmed in order, because I know the first scene shot with a boat chase. They were his first, and he had the accident straight away, and they had to go and film a load more without him because he did something to his arm, I think. Oh no, his teeth. One of his teeth got knocked out because the boat smashed against something, and it banged against the windscreen of the boat.
Oh.
So they were his first scenes. So the studio shots would have been quite a bit further down because they were out on location.
Bob, I did notice how many stunts he does in this himself.
Yes.
You see him and you think, oh, that changes later. So obviously, the flip side is it's great that you get to see actually Roger Moore doing a lot of the action.
Yeah. And it proves he can't run as well.
Yeah.
I really buy him as a spy in this. I do not see him as like a movie star in a spy film. I see him as a genuine. This guy, he's a incredible, crisp, charismatic, good-looking guy, but he could still slip into the background a lot more. And yes, of course, he stands out, white man in Harlem,
like a cue ball.
Yeah. But I do buy him. Like I think, like Harry said, he doesn't flinch in those sort of torture scenes, but we're worried for him. And I mean, it's awful when he's got his finger, teeth. I know it is. I was quite.
No, it is. Yeah, it definitely is.
In the book, doesn't he actually break it? I think he does actually snap his finger in the book.
Yes, I think he does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because then when he's escaping, he's trying to fight with basically a broken finger.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Broken claw.
What do you think about him saying the iconic Bond, James Bond?
Oh, yeah.
To me, that's shot in an unusual way for your new Bond. You think of the impact of Connery saying it originally on that medium close shot, music comes in. Again, to throw forward to Pierce Brosnan in GoldenEye, they really give you that shot when he says his name. They even dip the ambient sound as he says it. But with this, it's sort of, he's walking across a room on a wide shot. I was even watching it thinking, well, this isn't very good for a trailer shot, is it? On the close-up.
Black Queen on the Red King, Miss...
Solitaire.
My name's Bond. James Bond.
I know who you are, what you are, and why you have come.
The music, though.
The music.
I think that does the heavy lifting. And he's got his hands behind his back. He's incredibly cocky, even though he's just, he could be facing death, couldn't he?
Yeah.
Maybe, again, they learned a bit from, correct me if I'm wrong, but George Lazenby gets his James Bond on the beach, out of the way on the beach, does he?
Yeah.
Because they're desperate to make it a big thing, whereas in this, again, it's, halfway through the film, maybe, or something, and shot in a completely different way. So maybe they thought, again, let's play it down a bit, or let's do it just a bit, more differently, or a bit subtler, just to try and...
if he looked like he had any nerves about saying the line, he really doesn't.
No. He does say that, doesn't he?
I think than ever in that moment.
A lot of the actors say after that. I mean, I think Daniel Craig said he had to do 100 takes or whatever at the end of Casino Royale. And Roger, I think, always jokes, that he started to do it in a Scottish accent. You never know whether he's joking or not, though, do you? But...
So, Live and Let Die. What can I say? Well, my intro Bond, so you never forget your first. That's what I would say. What do I like about it? Well, everything. The song is a banger. The cast is phenomenal. Jane Seymour is lovely. The whole supernatural overtones I quite like as well. Like Baron Samedi is one amazing character and just adds to the mysticism of everything. It's got the cracking Louisiana boat chase. Basically, it's an iconic movie and I love it a lot.
That's all for part 1 of our Live and Let Die 50th anniversary celebration special. But stay tuned for part 2.